Financial Argument. Follow us on YouTube.
Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, today on the market, we see that the Dow was down by 200 points or so. Gold slipped around $6 or so. And we can see right now that the economy is continually deteriorating. It's not improving. It's not getting better. We see a lot of the indicators are equal to or worse than 2008. We're continually covering this, and we are realizing now that the U.S. government central bankers, they're backed into a corner because the economy is deteriorating very, very quickly. And we can see right now that the United States government central bankers, they're not going to have many options left here. And they're going to have to do something to explain away why this economy is deteriorating so quickly, especially when it crashes, because you have to remember, they've been telling us all along that this economy is recovered, everything is fine, there are no bubbles, they're going to be raising interest rates, and anyone that doesn't believe this is peddling fiction, and that's coming from Obama. When this whole entire system comes down, they're going to need an explanation of why this happened, because they can't just say we were wrong, because then everyone's going to say, well, then what do we need the central bank for? They didn't help. They made the situation worse. They lied to us. But we can see around the world that the situation is not improving whatsoever. We know that Greece has very high unemployment. Austerity is being pushed on the people, and that is so Greece can get more debt. And the Eurozone finance ministers say Greece, they'll be able to receive another 2.8 billion euros in bailout loans after deciding that Athens had progressed sufficiently with all the reforms and austerity. That doesn't mean they improved the situation. It doesn't mean that the people are all working now. What it means is they cut their exposure, more people are out of work, and they're doing what the central bankers want. So they can put more debt on their books, so they can pay the creditors. And what this really means is they didn't want Greece to collapse, because that would look bad for the central bankers. Adding more debt to the country and then collapsing it does not look good, because the rest of the countries around the world are going to say, whoa, what just happened here? This is why they push for austerity. This is why they want them to cut their expenses, so they have the ability to take on more debt. They don't want them to get rid of the debt. They want them to take more debt and just barely stay afloat. We see right now the U.S. government central bankers, they are blaming millennials for what is happening in the economy. They're saying the economy is lousy because the millennials, they're not spending their money. They're not buying goods. They're not buying furniture. They're not buying jewelry. They're not buying gadgets. And the question is, why aren't they? Well, most of the millennials, they can't even find a job. Those that are graduating from college, the student loan debt is very, very high, and they only can find part-time work. And you have to remember, the value of the dollar has decreased so much that it really doesn't go that far, especially when housing prices continually moved up, rents continually moved up. Getting a part-time job and having the student loans, that's not going to help. And the millennials right now, well, they have it a lot worse than many of the generations, because they're in the downside path of this entire fiat system, where it is crashing. Now, the baby boomers who came in the 70s, they came in the beginning stages. Very low debt. There was hyperinflation or inflation. Interest rates were very high, and you could have purchased a house in 1969 for like $25,000, and by 1975, that same house was worth $75,000. But your income increased from $5,000 all the way up to $25,000 in that same period. Today, wages going the opposite direction. Housing prices are continually moving up because they created these bubbles once again. And if you really look, these millennials, those who are graduating college, there's the total amount of student loan debt is around $1.4 trillion. So they're really not to blame. It's the circumstances that surround them. They don't have the same experience as the baby boomers back in the 70s. Very different experience, because at one point you have the beginning of the fiat system. Now we're at the end of the fiat system, and the entire system is falling apart. This is why U.S. home ownership rate is at its lowest that it's ever been. Because nobody, the upcoming generation, cannot afford homes. For millennials, the home ownership rate fell to 34%, from around 40% for young adults in prior decades. Over the past 3 decades, the U.S. averaged nearly 120,000 more business births than deaths per year. Between 2008 and 2011, on average, 30,000 more businesses died than were born. And this is according to the Census Bureau. The core of the U.S. job creation machine has been faltering and is not a sign of a healthy or even a recovering economy. Like I said, we're at the end game here. This is what it looks like when the entire system is imploding. It's a completely different experience coming off the gold standard in 1971 when the fiat system was being created, and all they had to do is have inflation, raise interest rates, and everyone felt good. The opposite is happening right now. We see the Federal Reserve Labor Market Condition Index. Well, that is crashing. They were expecting a 1.5 rise, and it plunged by 2.2% in September. And that is from a downwardly revised August drop of negative 1.3% from a 0.7% drop. So we can see right now we are in the same situation that we were back in 2001, 2008, going back even further to the other recessionary times. Every single time the Fed Labor Market Condition Index was declining, we entered a recession / some type of depression. And here we are today in the same exact position. Now, we know the U.S. government central bankers, they've been talking about getting rid of cash. That's their ultimate goal. They want to get rid of cash. They want to control the currency. This way you can't take anything out of the bank if you are not using cash. They can track all your purchases. They can do bail-ins with ease. And we see the U.S. Federal Reserve, well, they're planning to publish a paper later this year outlining its views on the startup financial innovations sweeping the banking sector. And this is coming from Fed Governor Brainard. And they're saying the Fed recognizes blockchain, and it may represent the most significant development in many years in payments, clearing, and settlement. And the central banks right now, he says, they are working to set this up. They're conducting a 360-degree analysis, and they will move forward with this maybe by next year. Because right now, the banks, the central banks, they've been testing the applications of blockchain for trading derivatives, and it's a way they can replace the existing system. So here we are already. They are getting prepared and ready to do away with currency. Everything will go digital. And of course, we know why they want to do this. They have complete control. They can track you. They can shut down your purchases at any time. You'll never have cash on hand, so you can't keep anything in your home. For taxes purposes, they'll have records of everything that you do. And if you do not agree with the government or the powers that be, they can shut you down with a flip of a switch. And also, when the entire system comes crumbling down, all they have to do is go into your account and take whatever they need. Of course, it's all digital because you can't take it out. So what they're doing is they're creating a way to have full control of the system. And you have to remember, these central bankers, they do believe that after the economy crashes and all said and done, they're going to restart the system. They don't even question it. This is their plan, to explain away why the crash happened, make people believe that it was another group, another country. This is why we had to go to war. And most likely after the war, depending on how many people are left, they will restart this entire system the way they want. And the only way to get out of this is to get rid of the central banks. People in Europe, people in America, people in Canada, Australia, UK, everyone will need to stand up and say, you know something? We've had enough of this. There's no reason to have a central bank. There's no reason for this central bank to even exist. It doesn't provide anything to the people. Actually, it makes it worse for the people. And at this point, this is what we'll need to do. We'll need to get rid of the disease. The disease is the central bank. This is the main problem. Think about it. Why do governments have private central banks? What is the purpose? The government can create their own currency. I mean, the central bank, they push a button and currency is created out of thin air. They don't have to do anything. Governments can do the same. Actually, governments can do it without attaching interest. I mean, the United States government, they go to the private Western Central Bank and they borrow the currency that was created out of thin air, and there's interest attached to it, and then the United States government creates bonds, which then is given to the central bank. Well, if they can create the bonds, why can't they just create the currency? It's the same process. So what would be the reason why the government needs the private Western Central Bank? There is no reason. The only reason, most likely, that they keep them is because the central bankers maybe give these government officials currency, do them favors, set them up, provide a nice life for them. Because there's no other reason why the central bank needs to exist at all. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.